Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Scott Wharton with us today. Scott is the CEO of Tandem PV. It's a disruptive solar energy company based in the Silicon Valley. He's board member at a bunch of companies, worked at Logitech for 8 years, which is a pretty long time. Also CEO at Vidtel. Vidtel got acquired in 2013, and yeah, before that, mostly VP marketing, I would say. So, Scott, is that a fair and accurate view of who you are professionally? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that. I'm also, I would say, serial entrepreneur, and then I've done 5 startups and scale ups in a row. So before those other 2 companies, I started early stage, and they both IPO'd. So I've had a lucky and fun background of diving from different startup experiences, and even the Logitech one was an internal startup that I grew to over $1 billion from a small scale. So I like kind of building things.
Nice. And what's the unlucky part, the part that you could control? What traits did you develop that led to that many IPOs and that level of success?
You're asking the lucky part or the unlucky part?
The unlucky part, of course, because lucky, I mean, yeah, we don't control that one, right? And it's like a humbleness. But what about the part that you did control?
Yeah, I think for most of my career, I've been earlier than late in a market. And I think when you're too early, it can be almost as bad as late. And then it takes a while for a market to develop. So for example, in the first 2 startups I did, it was in the voice for IP space. So it was incredibly exciting. It was the first voice for IP company, but it took, 20 years for it to come mainstream. So I think, and then I started doing video conferencing in the 90s, working on the first commercial video conferencing product. And the video conferencing, as we know, really only became mainstream in 2020 during the pandemic. So I've really enjoyed being early in some technologies. And probably if I had to do it over again, what I learned about it, Logitech was waited until the market was a lot more mature. And then I think we were in the right position to take advantage of that. And I'm hoping here for solar energy that solar's been around for 68 years, but it's finally hitting tipping point where it's a mature, cheapest technology, scalable. So we'll see if I'm right. We can talk about I am in an earlier technology part of solar. So we'll see if I made the right decision or not. Not sure.
Right, but being early is good. You can have a moat, but sometimes you just have to wait too long and the cash gets depleted, motivation just fades away, right? So, for example, I think AI right now we're in an incredible time. It's this shit's gonna pop off really quickly.
Yeah.
Solar, I don't know. I had a call center and we did a lot of solar calls back then. That was like 2015 or something like that. So why do you see solar exploding the next couple of years?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but one is because solar is now the cheapest energy source in the world. So yeah, that wasn't true 10 years ago because the cost has come down 90%. So I think in a lot of people's minds, solar is still this thing that needs subsidies and expensive, but that's not true anymore. So that's one, myth that I would dispel. I think the second thing is that solar is not only mainstream, but it's actually the majority of our new energy is over solar, which probably most of the people listening don't know. Like to give you a
I
fact,
didn't know.
in 2024, 90% of all new energy in the United States was solar and wind and batteries. So most people think drill, baby, drill, and we're going to go back to all those other things. It's not true. Just to reinforce that point, in January and February this year, even with the whole new election, 98% of all incremental energy in the United States, solar and wind, with the majority of it being solar. So we've already kind of hit a tipping point. And it's not just in the US. In China, they deployed 300 gigawatts of solar last year. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 300. San Francisco uses a gigawatt. So that's 300 San Franciscos of power. They did more solar energy than the entire United States in the last 68 years. So it's already hit a tipping point. Most people don't know about that because it's just moving so fast.
That's incredible. And what does Tandem do exactly? Because I still can't see exactly why it would be like a gold mine, like from a hardware perspective, but you're probably on the software side.
No, we're making a hardware, we're making a software, we're making a solar panel.
Huh,
It's a next
interesting.
generation one. So what makes it next generation is it's using a completely new material science called a perovskite. Good cocktail party term that everyone will learn now. So perovskite is a crystal structure, very common on the Earth, and 200 times thinner than a traditional silicon panel. So it's literally 1/100th the width of your hair. Uses no rare earth metals or minerals. There's no mining. We actually make it in a lab in California. So think about, we have 1 millimeter thick of an ink that we put on a piece of glass, standard piece of glass, and it has better performance and it's cheaper than making a traditional solar panel. Now, what we do is the reason why the company is called Tandem is we take the perovskite layer and essentially we stack it on top of a traditional silicon panel layer. And then the combination of the two allows us to be at least 30% more power than a traditional panel. So it's revolutionary in that it's way more powerful than current solar panels, but it'll also be cheaper, and we can make it in the United States instead of having to buy it all from China.
Nice, right place at the right time, I guess. The R&D that you invested to get there, was it real complicated to get to that level, and how long did it took you?
It's very complicated. This is definitely what people call deep tech. So I'm not a founder, but the two founders have their PhDs from Stanford in material science and applied physics, a bunch of dumb guys. And then they've been working on this for more than a decade. So I would say it's the holy grail of solar. Hundreds of organizations around the world are working on this. We just happen to have a lead right now, which is super exciting. And we just announced raising a fundraising round, our Series A, of $50 million in equity and debt. And now we're building what I think will be the first commercial factory in the United States for building this technology. So we're about a year away from being able to go from late stage R&D to commercialization. And it's been a long time coming. I mean, 10 years is a long time before you get to revenue.
Right. Elon, was it Solar City? What was his solar startup called? Like, why not build like a gigafactory in the solar space? Didn't he had that idea at the time?
In a way, but if you look at, I would say what Tesla's done in solar has been really disappointing in that Solar City is not a technology company, but really a reseller. In fact, they resell their products, standard vanilla solar products from another company. So when you think about Tesla and you think about Elon, I think about someone who's innovative, breaking the mold, owning their own tech. Solar, they're just kind of like a Me Too blah. So I think if they had a technology like ours, maybe that would fit in more with what they're doing. But right now, I think their solar strategy is kind of, meh.
And who do you want to resell those to other businesses or direct to consumer as well eventually?
So none of the above. So we are selling to utility scale customers. I'm working on a presentation right now about the myths of solar because there are so many of them. So one of them, which I will not include in there, but most people think of solar as being primarily on rooftops for your home, but actually less than 10% of the solar in the US is residential.
Like solar farms, right?
82% is solar farms. So almost all of the solar deployed in the US is utility scale farms. So that's what we're focused on because that's where the money is, that's where the opportunity is. And if you want to solve climate change, you got to go big, and we want to go big or go home.
And how did you stumble upon Tandem yourself, and why are you the best fit as a CEO?
So way back when I went to business school, I do not have a PhD, and my classmates were getting wealthy on being management consultants and investment banking. I went to go work for the Solar Energy Industry Trade Association for $4 an hour, and I fell in love with solar. Look, it's another example of a mistake I made where I was probably too early. So trying to get a job in the industry, it was not ready for me. So I went and pivoted and I said, what else do I like? I said, well, I kind of like this internet stuff. So I ended up doing these 4 other startups. And then I met one of the investors about 2.5 years ago. I was speaking at a conference in Germany. And I was meeting a VC. I'm like, what do you invest in? He's like, I've got this solar thing. Tell me about your solar thing. It's a perovskite. And like everyone here listening, I said, what the hell's a perovskite? And then when I learned more about it and the team, what I realized that this is really the future of energy. It's one of the key things that I think will solve climate change. And there were 2 brilliant founders and PhDs, which were very, very smart at building things in the lab, but nobody knew about them because they were in the lab. So I felt like I could use my experience at scaling things up to complement what they were doing on the science and technology side.
What's the size of that market? Because you raised so many millions, 120 in total, pretty soon, right? So, like, what's the size of that market, and what will you use these hundreds of millions for?
Yeah, I mean, the size for the solar market for panels is about $200 billion a year. It's really
A
big.
year.
A year, just panels, by the way. And I think most people know that with AI and electric cars and all the electrification um, and the movement away from fossil fuels, that number's got to grow a lot. I mean, the expectation is it's going to be $1 trillion a year business because everything that we do and everything we want to achieve is going to be fundamentally tied to electricity, especially AI. And I think most of the people here listening, I'm sure, know that AI, as Sam Altman said, the biggest impediment for AI is actually electricity.
Yeah, and cooling down, right? Like the water used to cool down these GPUs.
Water for sure, but I mean, even cooling down water, how do you cool it? Electricity.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. That's super interesting. So, yeah, where do you see the company going after raising the multi millions? Where are you going to invest these precisely? More R&D or just production? Just creating the manufacturer must be like 30 million at least, right?
It's expensive. Yeah, that's why we raised the $50 million. Part of why it's so expensive is you have to buy these big tools to make panels that are the full size. So today we make a solar panel that's like a size of a tablet, and we need to make them the standard size, about the size of a door. And the analogy I give people is if you want to bake a pizza at home, yeah, you can throw it in your home oven. You want to bake 20,000 pizzas at a time, you need a massive industrial oven, but the pizza's the same. So that's what we're doing to scale up. And I would say we need to do two things that are both very hard, but the idea is very simple. One is we're at R&D scale right now, and we're scaling up to build this small, medium-sized factory. I mean, it's the size of like a football stadium, but that's small in solar panel world standards. And the main goal of that is to prove that we can build a product at full scale and then fulfill customer demand. Once we do that, then we're going to be building up gigawatt scale like Elon. And our goal is to be the national champion in the United States for the future of our energy. So it's a big ambition. I've had big ambitions before. I've been lucky enough to be, part of four things that were able to scale up. And I think this one looks like the biggest one yet.
Yes, it does. The cost per unit, what's the price via a common solar panel? And have you got it to like the lowest price that you can from a economy of scale perspective?
Yeah, well, because we're taking this technology and putting it on the existing technology, we're adding a little bit of cost, but the marginal cost that you add is actually lower than the amount of power that you add. So it's actually going to be at scale, not today because we're in small scale, but it would be cheaper, significantly cheaper than what you do today for traditional solar panels. And I think when people think about energy, usually the lowest cost wins. So we're going to move from silicon panels, which is already the lowest cost power, to something even cheaper. And my expectation, because this is usually what happens in energy or other things, when you have a great thing that everyone wants, electricity, and then you make it cheaper, of course, people are going to want more of it. So it has a lot elasticity of demand.
Right. And these solar farms, they are the ones supplying these huge data centers, right? Why not sell to these data centers directly?
Because they typically don't buy solar panels and power themselves. So most of the hyperscalers, Googles, et cetera, they're very, very interested in having more power, but they tend to rely on these specialists. So the specialists are called IPPs, or independent power producers. So even they are a specialist group in that they buy all the energy, the land, and so on, and they deploy it, and then they sell to either data centers or they sell to the utility. So like a PG&E and Con Ed today, they actually don't generate most of their own power. They go to these third parties. So there are companies like NextEra, Arevon, and others that some people here probably haven't heard of, but their market caps are in the tens of billions of dollars, and they're deploying gigawatts of scale, many of them focused on data center deployment, because that's where a lot of the growth is.
Right. And who would be some of your competitors? Because I believe you're not the only one in that niche, right? Like who's there to watch for?
Yeah, I mean, because this is the holy grail of energy. So of course, they're going to be literally hundreds of organizations, universities, and companies around the world working on this. I'd say we roughly have about 8 to 10 competitors. There are about 4 in the US, about 4 in China, There's a company in Europe. Most of these companies nobody's ever heard of, but they're leaders in this particular specialist area on perovskites.
And talking about China, couldn't they just copy paste and improve your technology? What is your moat? Will it be the manufacturing plant or?
Well, the moat's a whole bunch of things. I mean, this is a pretty difficult technology. It's really impossible to reverse engineer it. So even if someone in China had it, we put a whole bunch of trace elements and additives into our panels that burn off during manufacturing. So they're critical to getting it right. So if you don't know what those are, you can't reverse engineer our products. And the reality is what the Chinese are really good at is they've taken this existing silicon technology, and usually what they do is they've been refining the manufacturing process every year, and they've been driving the costs down. But fundamentally, it's the same technology for the last 25, 30 years with some tweaks. What we're doing is a completely new material science. So it's a blank sheet of paper. It would be like going from making a bicycle to a rocket. Like they're different. They're both transportation, but they're fundamentally different. So they have to start over like all of us do. And I think we've got a lead being in Silicon Valley and taking advantage of our innovation. And that doesn't mean they can't catch up, but we got to keep racing ahead. That's what startups do.
Yeah, the funding as well, I would say. Talking about China, the tariffs, is it more of a confusing thing for you and your investors? How are you navigating this? Will your eventual Gigafactory be mostly autonomous bots, or can we really have people at $15 an hour working there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on the tariff side. But I would say there's a couple things. There are particular tariffs against China for solar panels that go up and above the existing panels that for years have made it very hard for the Chinese to sell directly into the United States. What they did is they started moving things into Southeast Asia. So there are 4 countries, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, that do 77% of all the imports into the US. And 3 weeks ago, there was a anti-dumping countervailing duties action with the Department of Commerce. And the range of the tariffs, the average was about 200%, but the range was between 40% and 3,500% of a tariff. My wife looked at it and said, "Is that the American comma or the European comma?" I'm like, "No, honey, it's the American one." Effectively, that will mostly block the Chinese imports from coming in. So there is a big move both for that and also having strong incentives to be able to manufacture in the US. And we're taking advantage of both of them. And right now, the cheapest place to manufacture solar in the US, believe it or not, busting another myth, is the United States, because we have these combination of tariffs, but we also have these strong incentives that are, there was actually a bill yesterday that came out in the House. And so the headline that most people are probably reading right now is the IRA is going to be repealed. But what they don't tell you is that the manufacturing credits for solar manufacturers, they're going to keep all that. So that's actually really good for us. So I think it's a combination of all those things and innovation. And the reality is I think companies in the US want to buy things in the US, all things being equal. So I think we have a pretty good chance of succeeding here. Will we be selling in Africa in the near future? Probably not.
And as a Silicon Valley libertarian guy, do you think this is how the world should operate? Because yeah, like people want to buy local, right? Like I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. I would love to encourage someone down my street and in a tienda instead of buying at the grocery store, right? That's pretty cool. It's close to me. It's my own safety sort of, and yeah, I can see the direct benefit in my own small community. That's good. But I don't need a government to sort of intervene and tell me what to do and what not to do and try to control trade, generally speaking. I think that's also a net loss for the full world, and the US included. What do you think about that?
I mean, I fundamentally believe in free and fair trade, but the Chinese are not practicing free and fair trade. They're cheating. So what they do is they, in particular areas, I think we know what they are. They're batteries, electric vehicles, solar panels. They basically give away free capital, free land, free, sometimes slave labor. That's not fair. So if it was an equal playing field and we were playing with people who had the same rules, I'd say, yeah, we need to win and lose based on what we're doing, but it's not free and fair. I'd say the second thing is that I do fundamentally believe that we can't protect everything the way we're trying to do it, but I think there is a bipartisan consensus that there are certain industries that we want to have some of it ourselves. Like, for example, 95% of all of the silicon technology is coming from China. And I think most of us see the silicon cells, actually the wafers, which are part of it, are 98% of it is from China. Now, if we look back 4 years ago, the Germans said, hey, why don't we get all this cheap gas from a guy named Vladimir? What could go wrong? He's a good guy. He'll keep selling to us, right? Maybe not so much. So I think even if in a free trade world, which we're not living in, I think there's some value in the United States at least having some of our semiconductors, our future energy sources. Now, does that mean we need to get all of our lumber and stuff, subsidized? I don't think so, but at least I think there are some key industries. Food, maybe we want to have our own food so people can't starve us to death. So, and I think we're as a country realizing that some countries don't play by the rules, and then we don't live in a perfect world where we can have a unlimited free trade where people can block us from getting things we want. So that would be the caveats to this, I think, very naive view that we'll just have unlimited free trade. What could go wrong?
Yeah, I think free trade by nature is very unfair, right? And as a serial entrepreneur with many IPOs and exits under your belt, you know that it's a savage landscape. But yeah, I think we still need like, I don't know, 5 or 10% rules, right? And some people still break these rules, right? And then you get a jungle when that happens. So yeah, the valid points that you made. You mentioned that 98% of new energy in China is green or something like that. Does that mean we fix the full global warming problem? Are we good because green techs have popped left and right, or is there some massive work still to do as a humanity?
It's a great question, but it's a mixed bag. The 98% I was referring to is there's a part of a silicon solar panel called the wafer, which is a pretty hard thing to make, and 98% of that today comes from China. But you weren't that far.
Most of the new energy, like 90%, something striking like that, was green energy. I think you said with wind and solar.
That's right. So in 2024 in the United States, 90% of it was wind, solar, and batteries. In the first 2 months, it was 98%. But by the way, it's the same thing in China. 90% of China's new energy was solar, wind, and batteries. And the ratio in the US to China is about the same, 60, 65%. So interesting thing about China. So China's got about a third of the global emissions for global warming. So when we talk about global warming, it's really not global warming, it's China warming, because it's really a Chinese problem, because most of the developed countries like the United States and Europe, we're pretty flat to declining now. And I would argue the developing world is relatively small. Like, they're growing, but it's small. So this is fundamentally, if you want to solve global climate change, you got to solve the Chinese problem. Now, China, a few years ago, said that in 2030, for the first time, they were going to have the peak of their emissions. Now, here's the great news. China is doing such a great job at rolling out solar and electric vehicles. More than 50% of their new vehicles were electric, that China is going to peak this year. So they're 5 years ahead of schedule for solving climate change. So I think there's still going to be more fires. The world is still heating up. We're still emitting a lot of pollution into the air. It's not fast enough. Part of my inspiration to do this is I think we need to speed it up. It's not good enough. But there's a lot of good news happening where we are on a trajectory, both China and the world, where we are fixing climate change through rolling out cleaner energy. And I think that is despite, some of the things happening in Washington, but it's happening. And maybe it's probably too late to stop it.
Interesting. Well, Scott, thanks for being on. Really interesting points. Where can people find out more about you?
Go to tandempv.com, or you can go to my LinkedIn profile, /Scott Wharton. I think it's /Scott Wharton.
Yeah, or just Scott Wharton. I think you'll pop first. So that was Scott.